The evening had settled over a small Kentucky town with the dull gray weight of a storm that could not decide whether to leave or stay. Streetlights flickered on along the county road, throwing pale circles across wet asphalt, and Ethan's Harley rolled through them like thunder moving under glass. He had spent most of the day at Walker Auto and Cycle, rebuilding the carburetor on an old pickup for a farmer who paid in cash and silence, which suited Ethan just fine. At 46, he had learned that silence asked fewer questions than people did. His beard was streaked with gray, his knuckles carried old scars from a younger man's mistakes, and the faded fire department tattoo on his forearm told a story he rarely explained. Most folks saw the motorcycle, the black vest, the hard eyes, and decided what kind of man he was before he ever opened his mouth. That had stopped bothering him years ago. But as he slowed near Miller's Stop and Go, a little store sitting between a shuttered laundromat and a two-lane road that led out toward the farms, something by the back wall caught his eye. At first, he thought it was a bundle of clothes left beside the trash cans. Then the bundle moved. Ethan eased off the throttle, the Harley's engine dropping from a roar to a low, uneasy growl. A small girl sat tucked against the brick wall beneath the weak yellow glow of a security light, hugging a soaked teddy bear to her chest. She could not have been more than 8. Her sneakers were muddy, one lace dragging loose, and her oversized blue coat covered her arms all the way to her knuckles, though the air was only chilly, not freezing. She looked up when the motorcycle stopped, and Ethan saw the fear in her face before he saw anything else. Not the jumpy fear kids had around strangers. This was deeper, practiced, the kind that made a child measure every breath before taking it. Ethan killed the engine. The sudden quiet felt too large. He got off slowly, keeping both hands where she could see them, and stopped several feet away, close enough to speak, far enough not to crowd her. "Hey there," he said, his voice rough from years of smoke, engines, and swallowing words he should have said. "You lost." The girl shook her head. Rainwater clung to her pale hair in thin strands, and her eyes stayed fixed on his boots instead of his face. Waiting for somebody. Another shake. Ethan noticed then how carefully she held one side of her cheek away from the light, as if darkness could hide what pain could not. Something inside him tightened. He crouched, not too close, and softened his voice until it sounded almost unfamiliar to him. "What's your name, sweetheart?" For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, barely louder than the rain sliding from the gutter, she whispered, "Lily." Ethan nodded like she had just trusted him with something precious, because she had. "I'm Ethan. Some people call me Grave, but Ethan's just fine." Her fingers squeezed the teddy bear harder. He looked toward the empty road, the humming ice machine, the camera above the store's back door, then back at the child trying so hard to become invisible. His old instincts rose fast and hot, but he forced them down. A scared kid did not need a storm. She needed shelter. She needed calm. She needed one adult in the world who did not make fear louder. Ethan pointed gently toward the store. "I can get you something warm. Hot chocolate, maybe. You don't have to come with me. I'll set it right there on the curb, okay?" Lily blinked at him, unsure what to do with kindness that did not demand anything back. That was when the light caught the mark on her cheek, faint but clear enough to stop Ethan's breath in his chest. The wet pavement, the store lights, the smell of gasoline and rain all seemed to fall away. In their place came another memory, another little girl, another night when he had heard enough to know something was wrong and still said nothing because he was young, afraid, and told himself family business was family business. Ethan swallowed hard. He did not reach for Lily. He did not raise his voice. He only asked the question that turned the whole night silent. "Who did this to you?" Lily's lips trembled. She looked past him toward the road, as if expecting headlights, footsteps, consequences. Then she lowered her eyes and answered with the politeness of a child who had learned to apologize for being hurt. "It's my dad, sir. But please don't make him mad." Ethan stayed perfectly still after Lily said the words, because he knew one wrong reaction could send her running back into the darkness she had just barely stepped out of. The anger came first, sharp and immediate, rising through his chest like heat from a fire he had spent years trying to bury. But he did not let it reach his face. He had seen frightened people before, in burning houses, overturned cars, and rooms where nobody knew what to say. The worst thing a grown man could do in front of a scared child was become another thing to fear. So he breathed in through his nose, slow and steady, and nodded as if Lily had told him something he was strong enough to hold. "Okay," he said softly. "Thank you for telling me." Lily stared at him, confused by the quietness of his response. She seemed prepared for panic, disbelief, maybe even anger aimed in the wrong direction. Instead, Ethan stood slowly and walked to the store entrance, keeping her in sight through the front window the whole time. The clerk, a college kid with earbuds around his neck, looked up from his phone when Ethan stepped inside, rain dripping from his leather vest onto the floor mat. "You got hot chocolate?" Ethan asked. The kid pointed toward a small machine beside the coffee station. Ethan filled a cup, grabbed a bottle of water, a turkey sandwich, and a pack of napkins. He paid without making conversation, then returned to the back wall and placed everything on the curb several feet from Lily, exactly as he had promised. "No rush," he said. "You eat when you want." Lily looked at the sandwich like it might disappear if she blinked. Hunger finally won over fear. She reached for it with both hands, carefully, almost politely, and took a small bite. Ethan noticed the way she ate, not like a child enjoying food, but like someone trained to make good things last. That detail hurt him more than any bruise ever could. "Is there someone you trust?" he asked. "A neighbor, an aunt, a teacher?" Lily chewed slowly, then whispered, "Miss Miller." Ethan tilted his head. "School teacher." She nodded. "Third grade. She lets me stay inside at recess when it is too loud." That told Ethan more than she knew. He glanced at the backpack tucked beside her feet. A school tag hung from the zipper, the plastic cover scratched, but readable beneath the security light. Lily Harper. Room 3B, Green Valley Elementary. Ethan took out his phone, but he did not dial yet. "Lily, I need to call someone who knows how to help kids. I am not calling because you did anything wrong. I am calling because adults are supposed to keep children safe." Her face tightened. "Please do not call my dad. I will not call him. He says people will think I am bad." Ethan's jaw flexed, but his voice stayed gentle. "People who care about you will not think that." The rain softened to a mist, leaving the alley smelling of wet brick, gasoline, and cold pavement. Lily held the cup of hot chocolate with both hands, letting the warmth press into her fingers. "He is not always mad," she said suddenly, as if defending him was something she had been taught to do before anyone accused him. "Sometimes he says sorry. Sometimes he makes pancakes." Ethan lowered himself onto the edge of the curb, still leaving space between them. "People can have good moments and still do things that are not okay." Lily looked up then, really looked at him for the first time. "But he is my dad." The words were so small and so heavy. Ethan thought of Emily, his little sister, sitting at the kitchen table years ago with a cereal bowl she never finished, insisting everything was fine because children would rather blame themselves than admit the person in charge of loving them had become unsafe. "I know," Ethan said, "and that makes it hurt more. But being family does not give anyone permission to scare you." Lily's eyes filled, but she did not cry. She only looked down at her teddy bear and rubbed one damp ear between her fingers. "I tried to be quiet," she whispered. "I really tried." The sentence reached into Ethan and opened a door he had nailed shut decades ago. He saw Emily again, 12 years old, folding herself smaller at the sound of heavy footsteps in a hallway, while Ethan stood outside with his fists clenched and his courage missing. Back then, he had told himself he was waiting for the right time. The truth was uglier. He had been waiting for someone braver to come along. No one did. Ethan looked at Lily and understood with painful clarity that this moment was not about revenge, not about proving he was tough, not about making some grand speech in the ring. It was about doing the next right thing while a child was still close enough to save. He unlocked his phone and searched the elementary school contact page. When Grace Miller's name appeared, he pressed call. As the line rang, Lily watched him with frightened hope, the kind so fragile it could break if handled carelessly. Ethan kept his eyes on hers and said, "You are not alone now, sweetheart. We are going to do this the right way." The call rang 4 times before a woman answered with the careful brightness of someone who had learned to expect bad news after sunset. "This is Grace Miller." Ethan glanced at Lily, who had gone very still at the sound of her teacher's name coming through the phone. "Miss Miller, my name is Ethan Walker. I am at Miller's Stop and Go on Route 17. I found one of your students here, Lily Harper. She is safe with me, but I think she needs help from someone she trusts." The line went quiet for half a breath. And in that silence, Ethan heard recognition, worry, and the sound of 100 small pieces falling into place. "Is she hurt?" Grace asked. Her voice had changed completely. No politeness now, only urgency wrapped in control. Ethan chose his words carefully because Lily was listening to every syllable. "She has been out in the rain. She is scared. I gave her food and a warm drink. I have not touched her, and I am keeping distance so she feels safe." Grace exhaled, shaky but determined. "I am 10 minutes away. Please keep her there. Do not let anyone take her." Ethan looked toward the road, where headlights passed and disappeared behind the trees. "I will not." When the call ended, he did not feel relief. He felt the dangerous pull of another option, the old option, the one his younger self would have chosen without thinking. He knew Daniel Harper's address could be found in Lily's backpack or on school records. He knew how easy it would be to ride there, park that black Harley in the driveway, and let fear answer fear. The thought came dressed as justice, but Ethan recognized the lie underneath it. That path would make him feel powerful for 5 minutes and might leave Lily powerless for years. He looked down at his hands, broad hands with grease in the lines and old scars across the knuckles, hands that had once carried people out of burning houses and later learned too well how to become fists. He slowly opened them. Lily watched the movement as if she understood more than a child should. "Are you mad?" she asked. Ethan looked at her. "Yes." Her shoulders pulled inward. He softened immediately. "Not at you. Never at you. At him." Ethan let the question sit between them, honest but not careless. "I am mad that someone made you feel unsafe. But being mad is not the same as helping. So I am going to help." Lily studied him with those solemn eyes, trying to decide whether grown-ups could be trusted when they sounded calm. "How?" "First, your teacher is coming. Then I am going to call people whose job is to protect kids. They know what steps to take." Lily shook her head, panic rising again. "They will make me go home. Not if it is not safe. He says grown-ups always believe grown-ups." The words landed with the dull weight of something repeated often enough to become a cage. Ethan felt his throat tighten. "Sometimes grown-ups fail kids," he said. "But that does not mean every grown-up will." He took his phone again and dialed the county non-emergency line first. Then, after explaining the situation, was transferred to dispatch. He spoke clearly, giving the store address, Lily's age, the school name, and the fact that her teacher was on the way. He did not make dramatic claims. He did not use words that turned the moment into a spectacle. He gave facts. A child alone behind a store after rain. Visible signs of distress. A statement that she was afraid to go home. A request for an officer trained to handle a child welfare situation. When the dispatcher asked whether the child needed immediate medical attention, Ethan looked at Lily rather than answering over her. "Sweetheart, does anything hurt badly right now?" Lily hesitated, then hugged the teddy bear tighter. "My stomach feels twisty." Ethan nodded. Understanding fear could make pain hide and appear in strange places. "She is alert," he told the dispatcher, "but she needs to be checked by professionals." While he spoke, the store clerk stepped out with a nervous look, finally realizing something serious was happening behind the building. Ethan lowered the phone for a moment. "Could you make sure the security cameras keep recording?" The young man blinked, then nodded quickly. "Yes, sir." That simple yes mattered. Not because it solved everything, but because one more adult had chosen not to look away. Ethan ended the call and sat back on the curb, the wet denim of his jeans darkening against the concrete. In the distance, thunder rolled low across the fields, but the storm was moving east now, leaving the town washed clean and uneasy. Lily took another small bite of her sandwich. "Mr. Ethan?" "Yes." "If I tell the truth, will I still be a good daughter?" The question nearly broke him. Ethan looked at the child in the oversized coat, a child who had been asked to carry an adult's shame as if it belonged to her. When he answered, his voice was rough, but steady. "Telling the truth does not make you a bad daughter. It makes you a brave little girl who deserves to be safe." For the first time, Lily's face changed. Not into a smile, not yet, but into something almost as important. She looked like she had heard a door unlock somewhere inside her. Grace Miller arrived in a silver Honda Civic with one headlight slightly dim and the engine still ticking when she stepped out into the wet parking lot. She had not changed from her school clothes, only thrown a raincoat over a cardigan printed with tiny apples, the kind of detail that might have seemed ordinary on any other night. But to Lily, it was not ordinary at all. The moment she saw her teacher, her whole face shifted with a fragile kind of recognition, like a porch light appearing through fog. Grace did not rush her. She did not cry out or grab her or fill the air with questions. She walked slowly to the edge of the curb, lowered herself to one knee despite the wet pavement, and said in the same voice she used every morning in room 3B, "Hi, sweetheart." Lily pressed the teddy bear to her chest. "Hi, Miss Miller." Those 3 words were so small that Ethan almost missed them, but Grace heard everything inside them. She glanced once at Ethan, taking in the motorcycle, the leather vest, the hard face trying very carefully not to look hard, and the untouched distance he had kept between himself and the child. Whatever fear she might have felt seeing a man like him beside one of her students disappeared behind professional focus and something warmer than duty. "Thank you for calling me," she said quietly. Ethan gave a single nod. "She asked for you." Grace turned back to Lily, and the teacher in her softened around the edges. "I am glad you did. That was a very smart choice." Lily looked down at her shoes. "I did not want to bother anybody." Grace closed her eyes for half a second, as if that sentence had found a place in her heart already worn thin. "You are never a bother." The words hung there, simple and clean. Behind the store, the ice machine hummed. A pickup truck rolled past on Route 17, tires whispering over wet pavement. Ethan stepped a few feet away to give them space, but he stayed close enough that Lily could see him if she needed to. Grace sat on the curb now, not touching Lily, matching her height instead of towering over her. That mattered. Ethan knew it mattered because Lily's shoulders lowered one careful inch. "Can I ask you something?" Grace said. Lily nodded, barely. "Did something happen tonight that made you feel unsafe?" Lily stared at the hot chocolate cup, its paper rim softened by the rain on her fingers. Her lips moved once with no sound. Grace waited. She did not rescue the answer from the silence. She let Lily own it. Finally, Lily whispered, "He was drinking again." Grace nodded slowly, and her eyes changed in a way Ethan recognized. Not surprise. Confirmation. "Okay. I tried to stay in my room." "Okay. I tried to not make noise." Grace swallowed, but her voice remained steady. "You should not have to earn safety by being quiet." Lily blinked, as if no one had ever arranged those words in that order for her before. Then, with trembling fingers, she tugged at the end of her sleeve. Grace did not reach for it. She only asked, "Do you want to show me something?" Lily hesitated, looked toward Ethan, then back to Grace. Ethan turned slightly away, giving her privacy without abandoning her. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw only Grace's face, saw the pain pass through it, and vanish behind calm, because Lily needed calm more than outrage. "Thank you for showing me," Grace said. "You did the right thing." Lily's voice cracked. "I told you I fell last week." "I remember." "I lied." Grace shook her head gently. "No, sweetheart. You protected yourself the only way you knew how. Tonight you are telling the truth, and that is very brave." Ethan looked across the parking lot toward the dark line of trees beyond the road. He had spent years thinking courage sounded like engines, sirens, and men shouting over danger. But here it sounded like a little girl breathing through fear while a teacher sat beside her in the rain. Grace took out her phone and opened a note, not typing fast, not making Lily feel studied, only recording what mattered while it was fresh. She asked short, careful questions. Where did Lily feel safe? Was there another adult in the family? Did she know her aunt's phone number? Lily said her Aunt Karen lived 20 miles away in Fairview and made blueberry pancakes on Sundays. When she said it, her voice warmed for the first time. Ethan held on to that detail like a match in the dark. A safe name, a real person, a possible door. In the distance, a faint siren began to rise, soft at first, then clearer as it came down the county road. Lily stiffened. Grace noticed immediately. "That sound means more helpers are coming," she said. "Not trouble. Helpers." Lily looked toward Ethan. "Are you leaving?" He turned back then, his face shadowed beneath the store light, his voice low and certain. "No, ma'am. Not until you are with someone safe." Lily nodded once, and though she was still scared, she did not look quite as alone as she had before. The siren grew louder, but before the patrol car turned into the lot, Grace stepped a few feet away to speak with dispatch, leaving Lily seated on the curb with her hot chocolate and the teddy bear tucked beneath her chin. Ethan remained near the corner of the building, close enough to be seen, far enough not to crowd her. The rain had nearly stopped now, leaving beads of water along the chrome of his Harley and tiny rivers slipping through the cracks in the pavement. He could see his reflection in the dark store window, a broad man in a black vest with tired eyes and a face most people would not trust in a school parking lot. For the first time in years, he wondered whether Emily would have trusted him if he had looked like this back then. Her name came into his mind without warning, as clear as if someone had spoken it beside him. Emily Walker, 12 years old, white sneakers, crooked ponytail, always humming songs from the radio while she drew horses in the margins of her homework. She had been the gentle one in their house, the one who remembered birthdays and apologized when other people stepped on her feet. Ethan had been 15 then, tall enough to look like a man, but still too young to understand that silence could become its own kind of betrayal. Their stepfather had ruled the little ranch house outside Bowling Green with moods everyone learned to read. A slammed cabinet meant stay upstairs. A certain sound in his truck engine meant do not ask questions when he came home. Their mother worked double shifts at a diner off Interstate 65, always exhausted, always hoping tomorrow would be calmer. Ethan used to tell himself he was protecting Emily by keeping her distracted, by walking her to school, by saving quarters for chocolate milk, by making jokes when the house felt tight and airless. But protection that ended at the bedroom door was not protection at all. One winter evening, he had found Emily sitting on the back steps in a coat too thin for the cold, staring at the frost on the grass. She had said, "Do you think good kids can make grown-ups stop being angry?" Ethan had laughed it off because the truth scared him. He told her things would get better. He told her to just stay out of the way. He hated himself for those words now because they sounded too much like instructions for disappearing. Years later, Emily left a note on the kitchen table saying she was going somewhere nobody yelled. She was 16. Ethan searched for her until money ran out, then searched again whenever guilt grew louder than pride. He never found her. That absence had followed him through firehouses, barrooms, cheap apartments, and lonely highways, sitting behind his ribs like a stone he could not cough up. Now, looking at Lily, Ethan understood that the past did not return to punish a man. Sometimes it returned to ask whether he had learned anything. Lily glanced at him over the rim of her cup. "Mr. Ethan?" "Yes, ma'am." "Why do people call you Grave?" He almost gave the easy answer, the one about motorcycles, black clothes, and a nickname earned young because he never smiled. Instead, he told a gentler truth. "Because for a long time, I kept too many things buried." Lily considered that with the seriousness only children could give to strange adult sentences. Like secrets. Ethan nodded slowly. Some secrets get too heavy. They start burying the person carrying them. Lily looked down at her teddy bear. "I have secrets. I figured you might. Are they bad?" Ethan crouched again, careful, steady, his boots planted on the damp pavement. "No. What happened to you is bad. Telling someone is how the secret stops getting heavier." Grace watched from near her car, phone pressed to her ear, tears bright in her eyes, but not falling. She had heard enough to know Ethan was not trying to be a hero. He was trying to be useful. That was rarer than heroism and often harder. The patrol car pulled in without lights flashing now, slow and respectful, stopping beside the gas pumps instead of crowding the child. Officer Rachel Bennett stepped out, a woman in her late 30s with calm eyes and a rain jacket over her uniform. She did not approach immediately. She spoke first with Grace, then looked toward Ethan, then toward Lily, measuring the scene with the patience of someone who understood that safety was not only a place, but a feeling. Ethan rose and took one step back, giving the officer room. Lily reached suddenly toward the air, not touching him, just reaching. He understood. From his wrist, he untied the old black bandana he wore under his glove and placed it on the curb beside her. "You can hold that if you want. It is just cloth. Nothing scary." Lily picked it up and squeezed it in her small hand. Officer Bennett came closer and knelt where Grace had knelt before. "Hi, Lily. My name is Rachel. I heard you had a really hard night." Lily looked at Ethan, then Grace, then the officer. The bandana twisted in her fingers. Ethan held his breath, not because he doubted her, but because he knew how much courage the next breath would take. Lily whispered, "I do not want to go back tonight." Officer Bennett's voice was soft, but it carried the strength of a locked door between a child and danger. "Then tonight, we are going to work on a safer plan." Ethan looked toward the clearing sky, And for the first time in 20 years, the memory of Emily did not feel like only a wound. It felt like a warning he had finally listened to. Officer Bennett did not ask Lily to repeat everything in front of everyone. She seemed to understand that truth, once spoken by a frightened child, should not be treated like a performance. Instead, she spoke quietly with Grace near the patrol car while another officer checked with the store clerk about the cameras. Ethan stood by the Harley with his arms loose at his sides, watching the road more than the people around him. It was not a habit he was proud of, always scanning for trouble, but tonight the habit had a purpose. Lily sat inside Grace's car with the passenger door open, a blanket from the trunk wrapped around her shoulders, the teddy bear on her lap, and Ethan's black bandana clenched in her hand like a tiny flag. For a few minutes, there was only the soft murmur of adult voices, the hiss of tires passing on Route 17, and the buzz of the lights above the gas pumps. Then a dark green pickup turned into the lot too fast, splashing through a shallow puddle before stopping crooked near the front door. Ethan knew who it was before the man even stepped out. Lily's whole body told him. She shrank back against the seat, eyes wide, breath caught somewhere between her chest and throat. Grace moved immediately, placing herself near the open car door without blocking Lily in. Officer Bennett turned with calm precision. Daniel Harper climbed from the truck wearing a work jacket over a wrinkled shirt, his hair damp, his face pulled tight, with irritation dressed up as concern. "There she is," he called, spreading his hands as if this were all one big misunderstanding. "Lily, honey, what are you doing? You scared me half to death." The words sounded soft, but they did not land softly. Lily looked at the floor mat. Ethan felt the old heat rise again, quick and dangerous, but he planted his boots and stayed where he was. Daniel's eyes cut to him, taking in the motorcycle, the vest, the beard, the size of the man standing beside the black Harley. "Who are you?" Daniel demanded. Ethan did not answer. Officer Bennett stepped forward. "Mr. Harper, I am Officer Bennett. We need to ask you a few questions." Daniel gave a short laugh with no humor in it. "Questions? My daughter runs off, and you are questioning me? She is 8. Kids make up stories." Lily flinched at that, and Ethan saw it. A tiny movement no one who loved her should have caused. Grace saw it too. Her face remained steady, but one hand tightened around her phone. "Nobody is accusing anyone in this parking lot," Officer Bennett said. "Right now, we are making sure Lily is safe and medically checked." "She is fine," Daniel snapped, then caught himself and forced his voice lower. "She falls all the time. Clumsy kid. Come on, Lily. Tell them you just fell." That sentence changed the air. It was not loud. It was not dramatic. But it carried the weight of something practiced, something Lily had heard before. Ethan took one slow step, not toward Daniel, but slightly between Daniel and Grace's car. His hand stayed open. No threat. No performance. Just presence. Daniel noticed and smirked. "What are you going to do, old man? Hit me in front of a cop?" Ethan looked at him for the first time, and his voice came out low enough that everyone had to quiet themselves to hear it. "No, I am going to stand here while the truth gets room to breathe." Daniel's smirk faded. For a moment, the only sound was the gas station sign creaking in the damp wind. Officer Bennett turned slightly toward Lily, not pushing, not pleading. "Lily, you do not have to answer him. You are safe to speak with me." Lily's fingers twisted Ethan's bandana. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. Daniel shook his head. "Do not start this." Grace's voice cut through, gentle but firm. "Daniel, stop talking to her." He looked stunned that she had said it, as if teachers were supposed to stay in classrooms and never step into real life. But Grace did not look away. Ethan felt something shift then, not in Daniel, but in the circle around Lily. The clerk had come to the doorway. The second officer stood beside the truck. Grace remained by the car. Officer Bennett knelt near Lily. One by one, adults were choosing to stay, to witness, to become a wall that did not trap her, but protected her. Lily looked at Ethan, and he gave the smallest nod. Not permission, belief. That was all. She swallowed hard, her voice thin but clear enough to carry across the wet concrete. "I do not want to go with him tonight." Daniel's expression changed, and he took half a step forward before Officer Bennett lifted one hand. "Stay where you are." Ethan did not move, but everything in him became still as stone. Lily kept going, tears sliding silently now, not from weakness, but from the cost of finally setting down what she had carried. I get scared when he drinks. I hide in my room. I tell people I fall because he says nobody will believe me. The parking lot went completely quiet. Daniel started to speak, but Officer Bennett stopped him with a look that had authority and sorrow in equal measure. Mr. Harper, you're going to wait by your vehicle. Lily began to shake after the words were out, as if courage had used up all the warmth in her body. Grace wrapped the blanket more securely around her, and Ethan looked down at his open hands, grateful they had stayed open. Because tonight, the strongest thing he had done was not strike back. It was refusing to let a frightened child stand alone. Officer Bennett did something that surprised Lily more than any loud command could have. She gave her time. She did not rush to fill out forms in front of her, did not make her repeat every painful detail under the gas station lights, and did not treat Daniel's anger as more important than Lily's fear. She simply stayed kneeling near the open car door and said, "You did something very brave. Now the adults are going to take the next steps." Lily held the black bandana so tightly her knuckles turned pale. "Will he hate me?" she whispered. The question moved through the parking lot like a cold wind. Grace's eyes glistened, but she kept her voice warm. "Sweetheart, you are not responsible for how a grown man chooses to feel." Ethan looked toward the green pickup where Daniel stood beside the second officer, talking fast, pointing once toward Lily, once toward Ethan, trying to turn the scene into a misunderstanding he could control. Ethan had known men like that. Men who believed volume was truth and fear was respect. Years ago, he might have answered that kind of man in the only language he thought the world understood. Tonight, he stayed silent, because Lily had just used her voice, and nothing about this moment needed to become about him. The store clerk came out holding a small tablet from behind the counter. "Officer," he said nervously. "The cameras caught the whole back lot. She was here before he pulled in, and you can see Mr. Walker keeping his distance. I can save the footage." Officer Bennett nodded. "Thank you. That helps." Lily looked up at the clerk, surprised again. He gave her an awkward little wave, then looked embarrassed and stepped back inside. It was a tiny gesture, almost nothing, but Ethan saw Lily notice it. Another adult believed her. Another adult did not look away. Officer Bennett asked Grace to stay with Lily while she spoke to Daniel. The officer walked across the wet concrete with calm authority, and the second officer shifted his stance, not threatening, just clear. Daniel's voice carried in pieces. "She is my daughter. She gets dramatic. I was worried." That biker put ideas in her head. Ethan heard his own name twisted into blame and felt no need to defend himself. Grace did it for him without even raising her voice. Lily asked for help before Ethan called me. He followed every appropriate step. Daniel looked toward Grace with a sharpness that made Lily pull the blanket higher. Officer Bennett saw that too. Nothing escaped her. She returned a minute later and crouched again, her face composed but serious. "Lily, I am going to ask you one important question. You can answer with yes, no, or I do not know. Do you feel safe going home with your dad tonight?" Lily stared at the rubber floor mat of Grace's car. Her teddy bear sat in her lap, one ear still damp from the rain. Ethan wanted to tell her she could say it, wanted to promise the whole world would rearrange itself around her answer, but he knew this choice had to belong to her. He touched 2 fingers to his own wrist, where the bandana usually sat, a silent reminder that she was not standing in the dark alone anymore. Lily lifted her head. Her voice shook, but it did not disappear. "No." Officer Bennett nodded once, as if that one word mattered exactly as much as it should. "Thank you for telling me." Grace put a hand over her own heart, not touching Lily, just showing her where the words had landed. Daniel started forward. "This is ridiculous." The second officer stopped him before he came any closer. Officer Bennett stood, and now her voice had the firmness of a door being closed. "Mr. Harper, based on what has been reported here tonight, Lily will not be leaving with you. We are contacting Child Protective Services, and she will be taken for a medical evaluation and placed somewhere safe while this is reviewed." Daniel's face went red with disbelief, then pale with the realization that the old rules were no longer working. For the first time since he arrived, he looked less like a storm and more like a man standing in the rain with nowhere to hide. Ethan did not feel triumph. He felt grief, because there was no victory in a child needing rescue from her own home. There was only the heavy mercy of stopping the harm from continuing. Lily watched Officer Bennett speak into her radio, watched Grace call Aunt Karen in Fairview, watched the store clerk save the camera footage, watched the second officer keep Daniel by the truck, and slowly understood what was happening. The truth had not destroyed her. The truth had gathered people around her. Her breathing changed first, then her shoulders, then the grip on the bandana loosened just a little. Grace leaned close. Your aunt is answering. She is on her way to the hospital to meet us. Lily's eyes widened. Aunt Karen is coming? Grace smiled through the ache in her face. Yes, sweetheart. She said she is leaving right now. Lily looked toward Ethan. She makes pancakes. Blueberry ones, Ethan said, remembering. That earned him the smallest almost smile. Gone as quickly as it came, but real. Officer Bennett opened the back door of her patrol car, then paused. Lily, you can ride with Miss Miller to the hospital if that feels better. I will follow right behind. Lily nodded, then hesitated. Can Mr. Ethan come? The question hit him harder than any accusation could have. Ethan looked at Officer Bennett, already prepared to be told no. The officer studied him for a moment, then said, he can follow us on his motorcycle and wait in the public area. Would that help? Lily nodded again. Ethan swallowed the lump in his throat and managed. Then that is what I will do. As Grace helped buckle Lily into the passenger seat, the little girl held the bandana out the window. Ethan stepped closer, expecting her to return it. Instead, she said, can I keep it until we get there? Ethan's face softened in a way that made him look less like a man carved from old roads and more like someone who had finally remembered how to be gentle. You keep it as long as you need. The convoy pulled out slowly, Grace's Civic first, Officer Bennett behind her, and Ethan last on the Harley, the engine kept low and steady. Behind them, the gas station lights shrank in the mirrors. Ahead of them, the county hospital glowed beyond town like a place where the night might finally stop taking things from a child and start giving something back. The ride to the county hospital took 12 minutes, though to Ethan it felt stretched thin across half a lifetime. Grace's silver Civic moved carefully through the wet streets, Officer Bennett's patrol car following with no siren, no flashing lights, nothing that would make Lily feel like she was in trouble. Ethan rode behind them with his Harley's engine kept low, the sound steady as a heartbeat beneath the last mist of rain. Storefronts slipped past in soft reflections, the barber shop, the pharmacy, the little church with the sign about Wednesday potluck, all the ordinary places of an ordinary town that had nearly missed an extraordinary cry for help. At the hospital entrance, Grace parked near the emergency doors, and Ethan pulled the Harley into a space beneath a maple tree dripping water onto the pavement. He stayed back while Officer Bennett opened Lily's door and spoke to her with that same calm voice, giving her choices wherever choices could be given. Lily stepped out wrapped in Grace's blanket, teddy bear under one arm, Ethan's black bandana still in her hand. Under the bright white hospital lights, she looked smaller than she had behind the store, as if safety had given her body permission to admit how tired it was. Ethan wanted to carry the weight for her, every ounce of fear, every confusing loyalty, every guilty thought that did not belong to her. But all he could do was walk a few steps behind and make sure she did not look back to find empty space. Inside, the waiting room smelled of coffee, floor cleaner, and old magazines. A nurse with silver hair and kind eyes came out almost immediately after Officer Bennett spoke at the desk. She introduced herself as Nurse Patty and crouched just enough to meet Lily's gaze without towering. We are going to make sure you are okay, honey. Nothing happens without someone explaining it to you first. Lily looked at Grace, then at Ethan. Can he sit where I can see him? Nurse Patty glanced at Officer Bennett, then at Ethan. Reading the room with the wisdom of someone who had seen many kinds of fear come through those doors. He can wait right over there, she said, pointing to a row of chairs near the hallway. You will know he is here. Ethan sat where Lily could see him through the open exam room doorway. He folded his hands together and rested them on his knees, aware of every movement he made. Grace stayed beside Lily. Officer Bennett made calls in a low voice. A Child Protective Services caseworker named Marianne Cole arrived 20 minutes later, carrying a soft purple sweatshirt and a clipboard she did not shove in anyone's face. She spoke with Grace, then Officer Bennett, then took Lily's aunt's information. When Marianne asked Lily whether she wanted Aunt Karen to come, Lily nodded so quickly the teddy bear slipped from her lap. Grace caught it before it hit the floor, and for some reason, that tiny save nearly undid Ethan. At last, through the sliding glass doors, a woman in jeans, rain boots, and a yellow cardigan hurried in with her hair half-pinned and her face full of fear. Lily. The word broke apart before it reached the desk. Lily turned in the exam room doorway. Aunt Karen. She did not run, not exactly. She moved like a child who was afraid the good thing might vanish if she reached too fast. Karen Harper met her halfway and dropped to her knees, arms open but waiting. Can I hug you, baby? Lily nodded, and then she was folded against the woman's shoulder, teddy bear, blanket, bandana, and all. Karen cried silently, one hand smoothing Lily's damp hair again and again. I am so sorry, she whispered. I should have known. Marian gently told her. What matters now is that you are here. Ethan looked away, giving them privacy, but Lily's voice pulled him back. Mr. Ethan? He stood at once. Karen looked up at him then, really seeing him for the first time. This huge rain-soaked biker standing awkwardly beside a hospital chair, as if he did not belong anywhere clean or bright. Lily held out the bandana. I am safe now. Ethan crossed the room slowly and took it from her small hand. His fingers closed around the damp cloth, and for a second he could not speak. Karen looked between them, understanding enough. Thank you, she said. Ethan shook his head once. She did the brave part. Lily leaned against her aunt, exhausted but listening. Ethan crouched to her height one final time that night. You asked earlier if you would be in trouble. Lily's eyes flickered. He kept his voice steady. You are not in trouble. Adults are supposed to protect children. When they do not, it is never the child's fault. Not one piece of it. Lily's chin trembled, but this time the tears that came looked different. They did not look like fear trying to escape. They looked like a little girl finally beginning to believe she was allowed to stop carrying blame. Officer Bennett stood in the hallway, Grace beside her, Nurse Patty near the desk, Marianne with the paperwork held low at her side, and Karen wrapped around Lily like a promise. Ethan saw then that rescue was not one dramatic moment. It was a chain of ordinary people choosing, one after another, to do the decent thing. As he walked back out into the damp Kentucky night, the hospital doors slid closed behind him, and the black bandana felt heavier in his hand than leather or steel. It felt like a vow. 3 months later, spring came softly to Green Valley, Kentucky, not all at once, but in small mercies. The maple trees along Main Street opened their new leaves like green hands. The ditches filled with wildflowers. The air outside Walker Auto and Cycle smelled of cut grass, motor oil, and warm pavement after a morning shower. Ethan had opened the garage doors early that Saturday because Grace Miller had asked whether he could help with a school fundraiser, just a simple bicycle safety day for kids whose families could not afford tune-ups before summer. He had expected maybe 6 children and a few flat tires. By 10 o'clock, the lot was full of bikes, helmets, parents, teachers, and paper cups of lemonade balanced on the hood of an old pickup. Ethan moved from one bicycle to the next with a wrench in his hand, adjusting brakes, raising seats, tightening chains, and showing kids how to check their tires before riding near the road. Some of the younger boys stared at his Harley like it was a dragon asleep beside the garage wall, but Ethan only smiled and told them the most powerful machine in the world was useless if the rider forgot to be careful. Grace watched him teach a freckled boy how to fasten a helmet properly, and she smiled in that quiet way teachers smiled when they saw a lesson land somewhere deeper than words. Near noon, a blue minivan pulled into the lot. Ethan knew it before the door opened. Not because he had been waiting, though some part of him had, but because the air seemed to hold its breath. Karen Harper stepped out first, carrying a plate covered in foil. Then Lily climbed down from the passenger side wearing clean white sneakers, a yellow sweater, and her pale hair brushed into 2 neat braids. She still held the teddy bear, but not as tightly as before. That was the first thing Ethan noticed. The second was that she looked around the busy garage lot and did not try to disappear. Grace walked over to greet them, and Lily hugged her without hesitation. Then the little girl turned toward Ethan. For a second, they only looked at each other across the sunlight. 2 people connected by one rainy night neither of them needed to name. Ethan set his wrench on the workbench and wiped his hands on a clean rag. Afternoon, Miss Lily. She smiled, small but real. Hi, Mr. Ethan. Karen handed him the foil-covered plate. Blueberry pancakes did not travel well, so we brought blueberry muffins instead. Ethan accepted them with the seriousness of a sacred offering. That might be the finest payment this shop has ever received. Lily giggled, and the sound caught him off guard. It was light, ordinary, and completely beautiful. Karen told him Lily was living with her full-time now while the court process continued, that she had started talking to a counselor in Fairview, that some nights were still hard, but mornings were getting better. Ethan listened without asking for details that did not belong to him. Healing, he had learned, was not a straight highway. It was a gravel road with slow turns, washed-out places, and moments when you had to pull over just to breathe. But Lily was here. She was safe. She was laughing near a row of bicycles in the sun. That was enough for the day. After a while, Lily tugged gently on his sleeve. "I brought you something." From her backpack, she pulled out a small red bicycle bell, polished until it shone. Ethan turned it over in his palm. "This is for me." She nodded. "For your motorcycle." A couple of children